Okay. This should be working now, yeah? I'm just checking all of my equipment here. It's not pulling up for me at the moment. So let me just play around for a second. How are you guys doing? Let me know in the chat what's happening. Let me just check the live stream. Yeah, looks like it's going. Looks like we're doing good. Okay. I mean, I hope it's pulling up. Can't get it to pull up on my phone. So let me just check to make sure. I want to make sure that it's pulling up for you guys. I expect more people to be watching in the playback, so you can fast forward through this if you're getting stuck on my technical difficulties. Live now. Let's see if this is going to echo back for a second. Stuck on my technical difficulties. Yep. All right. It's working. All right. That's all I care about. All right. All right. So now that I've made sure everything's working, hi. How's everyone doing? Today is one of our live streams, and this is the first time I've done a workshop live stream. And so I wanted to do this with you guys. I wanted to do a live workshop. If you're watching the playback, that's totally cool. You are welcome, and you are also joining us. And so I wanted to do a live workshop. I wanted to go over the different archetypes in fiction. So I asked you guys to vote on which archetype you wanted to start with, and Artist was the one that won the competition from my polls on YouTube and Instagram and buymeacoffee.com, my blog. You guys wanted to talk about the artist creator archetype, and I am stoked because that is probably my favorite archetype and the one I'm obsessed with the most. So strong start, ladies and gentlemen. So today what we're going to do is, this is a kind of a lecture and a workshop. So first we're going to define what the artist-creator archetype is, right? If you don't know anything about archetypes, you're in the right place. I'm going to teach you all about archetypes today, at least the basics of it, and then we'll go straight into the artist archetype. And we're going to look at some Otome examples for the archetype. We're going to do it backwards now. Okay. After that, we're going to do a Q&A. So any frequently asked questions from anyone in the chat. And we're going to do 3 writing exercises with this archetype. So that's the workshop part of our game today. So I'm going to give you 3 writing exercises. Very short, but it'll help you create an artist archetype. It'll help you build any sort of archetype, really, or any sort of character, I should say. And so we're going to do that today. But first, let's talk about what an archetype is. Maybe you haven't heard of this before, or maybe it's really foggy for you because there's a lot of information online about archetypes. It's all over the place. I even had trouble researching it because it feels like there's so many different types of archetypes that a lot of people make up, and so it's really hard to find the original archetypes and what it means to have a fictional archetype. Now, if you haven't heard of archetypes at all, let me explain what an archetype is. So an archetype is a patterned identity, a recurring fictional symbol. So that's just a really academic, expensive way of me saying that an archetype is a kind of character template. Like it's a template for a character, and it has the same basic outline no matter what story it's in. And so each archetype in fiction has a set of personality traits, struggles, kind of skill set, motivations, kind of like, it would be similar to like Enneagram, I guess you could say. Those people with certain Enneagrams supposedly have certain motivations and certain fears. And so an archetype in fiction is exactly the same idea as that. And so the archetypes in fiction actually come from Jungian ideas of psychology. And so all of the archetypes come from Jungian psychology. But Jungian psychology only has 4 basic archetypes originally. So the first one is the persona. And so the persona is how we portray ourselves to the world. This is basically our image. This is our conscious image. This is the image that we control, that we create. This is how we want people to see us, basically. That's our persona. And then we have our shadow, which is our repressed feelings or desires. And so it's not exactly our evil side. It would be easy to say that it's an evil side, but it's not exactly evil. It's just repressed. And so, yes, we do repress a lot of evil intentions, maybe evil actions, something along those lines. We repress it because it's not good to act upon it. And so those would be part of our shadow. Certain desires are not appropriate. That would become part of our shadow. Maybe they're not completely evil, but they are not appropriate, or at least we feel that they're inappropriate. And so this becomes part of our shadow. And then our anima animus. Anima animus is a little harder to explain, and I don't think Jung really goes too deep in it himself, but from what I can gather from Jungian books is that the anima animus is the masculine and feminine elements of our personality. And so if you are a woman, you have a masculine part of your personality that balances you out. If you are a man, you have a feminine side to your personality that balances you out. And so basically this is what balances out your consciousness according to Jungian theories. And the last is just the self. And so that's going to be these 3 merged together. That's the unified conscious and unconscious. And so the conscious things are going to be, actually I forgot one in here, it's going to be our ego and our persona. And so the ego is basically just consciousness. That's all that ego means in Jungian theories, is our consciousness, how we interact with the world. And so the ego and the persona are conscious. The anima animus and shadow are unconscious. We don't control the shadow or the anima animus. We have no control over that. Our unconscious controls that. And so it pops up randomly at the most inopportune times normally. And so the merge of those 4, not 3, I should have put in 4, but I'll do that for next time. The merge of those 4 create the self. It creates you. And so these create multiple archetypes in fiction. So this is not fiction. What I'm showing you now is not fiction. This is real psychology from Jung. And I actually go into it a lot more in my video about creating split personality characters, where I talk about the shadow and ego and things of that sort, and how to build characters using Jungian theories. So go ahead and check that out. I think the link's in the description. If not, I'll put it in there. I'll edit it back in there after we do this workshop. But go check it out if you want to learn more about Jungian theories. And if you have any questions about any of those, I'll go into them more later on. Just ask me and we'll make a video about it. But first we're going to talk about the basic archetypes in fiction. So what has happened is that they have created 12 archetypes in fiction from Jungian theories. And so you have the ruler, like the king or queen. You have the creator. You have the caregiver, like a doctor or healer, something like that. The sage, someone who's wise. the wizard, the innocent or the maiden, or you have the explorer, you have the jester, you have the lover, you have the hero, you have the rebel, and you have the everyday man. And so these are your 12 archetypes. But today we're just going to talk about the creator. So let's talk about the creator. That's what we came here to do. And so first let's talk about the traits that the creator or artist has. So they all have similar traits. They're all very creative, they're skillful, they're imaginative, they're usually obsessive about their work, right? So artists usually go into kind of manic episodes. They don't conform to any form of society, really. They're non-conforming. They stand out, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. But they stand out. They're dreamy. They're big dreamers. And those are their positive aspects. Now, on the other hand, they are also pretty selfish. They're self-absorbed. They're not always reliable. They're really manic, so they have lots of mood swings. They're workaholics. They struggle with keeping in touch with people or taking care of their health. And so those would be the positive and negatives of this kind of character. And so my my animations are off, sorry about that. But what motivates an artist? And so you can have different motivations for each kind of artist. One could just be the pleasure of creating. They just love creating. They just have to create. They like expressing themselves, things about that sort. Or they want to change society. They want to make society a better place. Or they want to leave a legacy. They want to be remembered forever. Or they want to make an impact on the world for eternity, something along those lines. Now, they will have a lot of internal struggles and external struggles. Of course, external struggles are going to be things like competition, and commercialism would be one where they struggle between making something that they enjoy making and making something that the public wants, or making something that a company wants in order to make enough money to survive. That would be more, or fame is another one. Fame would be another external problem. Misunderstandings about their work. Maybe people misinterpret what they're trying to express through their artwork, and that causes a lot of problems. And then you'll also have internal problems of perfectionism and artist blocks and imposter syndrome. You'll have those as well. So you'll have to decide what the internal struggles for your characters will be. And so the amount of jobs that an artist can have is pretty wide. So you can have a writer or inventor, architect, musician, painter, sculptor, designer, scientist, photographer, actor, choreographer, dancer, songwriter, director, game developer, jewelry designer, potter, art director, social media manager, video producer. It's pretty endless. You can choose any sort of occupation for this kind of archetype. It doesn't even need to be an artist job. Maybe their struggle is that they're an artist in a non-artistic job. You can do that as well. That's also a struggle for a lot of artists as well. But these are just some ideas that you can build off of when creating your artist archetype. So a few examples of these. Since it is my favorite archetype, I have quite a few examples. The first three, Raphael from Love in Deep Space. He is a painter, as well as Oda, also a painter from Kissed by the Baddest Bidder. You have Leonardo da Vinci from Ikemen Vampire. You also have Kiro from Mr. Love's Queen Choice. Even Geppetto from Lies of Peace. He would be a creator type. And Masao, one of my favorites from Rose in the Embers, also an artist. So these are different archetypes. If you want to check those games out, you can see the archetypes in those games. Now let's talk a little bit more about the personality traits of an artist creator. I was trying to think of a way to kind of put artist traits on a scale, and so this was the scale that I created and came up with. It is, you'll have artists on a scale of extremes between one of two things. And so you have a serious versus playful artist, or a professional versus a genius artist, sweet versus sensual, stable versus manic, reliable versus unreliable, reclusive versus social, and evil versus good. So let's take a look at all of these individually. So the first one, serious versus playful. So a serious artist will consider their art to be a duty or a legacy. They're not fooling around with their art. They are trying to make an impact. They're trying to do something big. They take it very seriously. A playful artist, on the other hand, will just enjoy experimenting and expressing themselves through their art. So they're not there to make the biggest impact in the world. At least that's not their first intention. Maybe that's a nice side bonus, but they're more or less interested in expressing themselves. They're more playful about their art. And on the other hand, you'll have a professional versus genius. So a professional creator is career and business minded. Now, maybe their job will come into play in this sort of thing. So maybe your artist would be an architect. An archetype is an architect is very professional, right? And so maybe their job comes into play on that. Or you have a genius artist who is innovative but unpredictable, usually not concerned with deadlines. They usually don't have clients in the same way that a professional artist would if they were such like an architect or interior designer or a robot engineer or something like that. Maybe a genius artist is just there for the ride. They just want to have fun, and fame and fortune has found them in the midst of that. And so they're trying to push art to its greatest form. They're not really interested so much in pushing their career to the highest ladder, right? And then you have the sweet versus sensual. I feel like this is where a lot of people spend their time when they create an artist archetype, is the sweet versus sensual artist. And so the sweet artist creates from a place of joy and hope and well-being, while the sensual artist creates from a place of passion and desire and humanity. And so the sweet artist wants to inspire hope and joy, and so that's how they express their work. And then you have the sensual artist, who creates from passion and desire and an exploration of what humanity is and how it functions. And so you might you could say that Kiro from Mr. Love's Queen Choice would be a sweet artist. He's just kind of a sweet, bubbly person anyways. But most of his music is from a place of joy. He just wants to make his fans happy, and he wants to make everyone happy. So that's his place. Now, the stable versus manic. Now, I would say that pretty much every artist is a little bit manic in bursts, but it doesn't have to be their main personality, right? It depends on what they create. So stable artist is methodical, even-paced. Again, this would be more of like the professional artist. A professional artist would be really good at their craft in a way that is professional, that meets deadlines, that isn't so manic, except when they have deadlines. Maybe they're manic around deadline time, but usually most of the time, if they don't have a deadline, they're not stressed, right? But a manic artist has bursts of creativity and burnout. So they are not on a schedule. They are following the mood of their art. And so they're all over the place, right? And that's with or without a deadline. They're all over the place. Maybe a manic artist doesn't even remember their deadlines, right? But a stable artist would. So a stable artist would be more parallel to a professional. And then you have reliable versus unreliable. So how good are they at meeting those deadlines? And so a reliable artist has a reputation for being on time, for being punctual, for keeping their commitments, for being professional. And then the unreliable artist has a reputation for missing commitments and deadlines. They don't make them. They don't even pay attention to them. And then you have reclusive versus social. And so a reclusive artist is just going to lock themselves in their studio and they don't make appearances. They don't come out in public. They don't want to see people. They just want to work on their art and collect money maybe, or just be left alone. So, and then the social artist makes public appearances. They engage with fans. They enjoy socializing. Or at least you might have someone in the middle who doesn't enjoy it but still does it. And I would say that would be closer to social, but maybe internally reclusive. And then lastly, we have evil versus good. And so the evil artist, I guess you would say evil artist is someone who makes art that benefits them. So they want money, they want power, they want personal vision for the world. Now, I wouldn't say that this makes them evil automatically, but I would say that they would have more of an inclination to become evil if they're willing to do art for this reason, for whatever the cost. And so you might have someone like Geppetto from Lies of P. I haven't played through that game all the way, but from what it seems like, from what I've played, he's not really on the straight and narrow. He creates puppets, and they kind of become evil, and I'm not really sure if he cares or not. But that would be someone that would be more on the evil inclination, I would say. It doesn't really make them evil per se, unless they're cheating to get that sort of money or power or something along those lines. But I would say that an evil artist makes art to benefit them and only themselves, and so they are more willing to manipulate the environment around them to keep those things. And then on the other hand, you have the good artists, the artist that makes art for the benefit of society. They do it for hope, for joy, and charity. Now, again, that doesn't really mean they're good. Maybe they just want that image of good, but this would be more of their motivation to work. Again, you can kind of mess with that on either side. In fact, let's take a quick look at character arcs in case you're building a character. And so these are kind of the general character arcs. You can go with any archetype with any sort of character, right? And so you have the first type of character arc, which is I would say a positive character arc. It's a character that starts good and becomes better. So they learn something new about themselves. They learn how to interact with people better. They're not evil per se. This would be more of the hero. So the hero is kind of the innocent character that becomes something. They start to understand the world as it is. And so the artist who is starting good and becomes better, maybe becomes better through whatever challenges they have. They become a better artist or they become a better person, but something becomes better. So that would be a positive character arc. And then you have a negative character arc, someone who starts good and then becomes evil. So you can have an artist that starts with the intentions of helping people, or maybe just making some extra money to pay off some loans, or just wanting to express themselves, and then suddenly they come into so much fame that they snap. They become evil through their external circumstances, or they get a taste of something that makes them greedy. And so this would be a negative character arc, when they start good but they become evil. Now, another character arc you could do, another positive character arc, is they start evil and become good. This one might be a little harder to write, to convince the audience for this one, but I think it would be a fun one. They start evil, maybe they fall in love, something like that, or something happens where they switch sides, they become the good guys. Now, you can also do the anti-hero character, which is basically none of these really. And so the anti-hero character is really just out from themselves, and they just kind of switch between those. But the last one I would say is the flat character arc, which is starts evil, stays evil. And so you have just kind of a manic character that has no intention of switching sides. And so that would probably be your antagonist in the story. And that would be a flat character arc. And so these are the different character arcs you would find in any story. And if you want to apply them specifically to the artist, you could do that very easily. So you can have a good artist that becomes better at their craft or better at their relationships. You can have a good artist that gets too much money and they're just addicted to money, or they become addicted to something else. They get addicted to power, they get addicted to attention, or they get addicted to their own vision that they have of utopia. That's probably the most common, is they won't let go of their vision for the future, and so it actually makes them become evil. Or they start evil and become good. The artist is making things for themselves. They're making things for power, and then they realize sooner or later through a chain of events that they can't keep that power, or that power is not worth keeping, or that power is too warped, something along those lines, and they become good, or they're just evil and they stay evil, and they cause problems for the other characters along the way. And so this could be, your artist archetype might not be the main character, right? It could be the protagonist or the antagonist or a side character or a betrayal character. So keep that in mind whenever you're creating characters. These will be your character arcs. So let's look at two characters and kind of look at how they're built. And so Raphael from Love in Deep Space, he is a painter. And his motivation, as far as I can tell, to paint is just to preserve, protect, and restore his homeland of Lemuria, which is basically, I would say, kind of like an underwater Atlantis. And so he is, from what I can tell, he basically makes money and all of the stuff that he does in the background. He makes a lot of money, which gives him a lot of power, which allows him to kind of manipulate behind the scenes and protect his homeland. So that's what I can get. If you've played that game and you think he's doing something else, let me know, because I tried looking through the lore and I couldn't find very much. But that's what I would say his goals are. And so I put him in the middle of serious and playful. He has a lot of dark moments. He's normally very playful and pouty, but when it comes to certain things, he's incredibly serious, and he goes into these dark moments that are not manic, but they're very strategic. And so I would say he's in the middle of playful and serious. I would say he's more of a genius character. I wouldn't say he's very professional. I would say he's a genius mainly for the fact that he creates his own materials. And so his materials have a kind of magical effect. And so he creates them himself. He scavenges for those materials himself. He collects those materials. And so I would say he's more of a genius type. Not in the absent-minded genius type, but just in the mental strategy type. Between sweet and sensual, he's more sweet, he's more innocent and pouty. He's been called a passenger princess a lot online, and so that's pretty much his vibe. He's not really innocent per se, but he's just very sweet, and except for the manipulative parts, but his personality generally is just kind of a jester. Stable and manic, I would say he's more on the manic side because of his giant mood swings. Now, the mood swings might be connected to his identity as a Lemurian who is controlled by the moon, it seems like, or the ocean. Well, I guess the moon controls the ocean, but he's more controlled. His mood swings are quite high and low, and that happens a lot in the game. And so I would say he's more of a manic. He's all over the place, and he's not very reliable because of it. He just disappears quite frequently without a word. And so he's also reclusive. He doesn't go to events very often. He doesn't really socialize with people. He's never at the exhibits, things like that. And I would say he's more on the side of good, even though he has some moments that are questionable, but I would say he's more on the good side. Now let's compare him to Oda from Kissed by the Baddest Bidder. If you haven't played Kissed by the Baddest Bidder, I highly recommend it for any Otome player. I feel like it's a classic. And so Oda's a fascinating character, and he's also a painter, but he's drastically different from Raphael. And his motivation is to sell paintings through an illegal underground auction for fun and money. So he's there to fool around, basically. He likes his power and things of that sort. And he's more playful because he has a lot of power and a lot of money and a lot of fame and a lot of prestige. So he has everything anyone could possibly ever want. And so because he has everything, he's very playful. He doesn't take anything seriously. He's there to have a good time. Now, ironically, he's more on the professional side, I would say, compared to Raphael, because he has deadlines. He enters like contests and things like that. He takes his work seriously as a profession, even though he's doing illegal activities. And I would say that he's also very sensual, completely different from Raphael. Oda messes around with people a lot, especially women. He treats the main character as a pet throughout the entire first season of the game. And so he's very sensual, he's very suggestive. And he just kind of he likes messing with people's heads in that sort of way. He's not sweet at all. Not whatsoever. He has his moments, but it's not the core of his personality. And he's more stable. I would say he doesn't really have... Actually, I think the scale should be closer to stable, because he doesn't really have any moments of extreme manicism. Like he has some manic moments when he has deadlines, but for the most part, he's very strategic. He's very aware of his surroundings, and so he's very stable. He's very manipulative, so he has to be very stable. And I would say he's a little unreliable just as a person. I wouldn't really depend or trust him for anything, but he's very social. He goes to events, he talks to people, he razzes around with his enemies, and so he's a social person. He doesn't shy away from any sort of event or fan meeting or anything like that, but he's evil. He's really on the side of evil. He's manipulative. He loves his art for art. That's one of his positive things, is his art is just an expression. He wants to push the boundaries of art. He wants to push himself with his art. He doesn't want to copy anything. So, but when it comes to relationships, he's not a straight shooter. He plays around. He manipulates people. He lies to people. He puts on a fake persona everywhere he goes. He has a completely fake image, and he switches to his real self when nobody's looking. And so that's why I would say he was evil. It's not really connected to his motivation for his work. That's why I was kind of saying you have to kind of be careful with my own definitions of good and evil. So that I had before, I would say that it's not really the motivation that makes them evil, it's their general personality. They just happen to be an artist at the same time. So I'm going to talk about a few questions that you probably might have about the archetype for artists. So let me pull up some questions here that might be common. Now you can leave some comments in the chat if you're watching this in the replay, and I will try to answer them. And so let's see. Let's see. Some common questions. So one thing you might think about is, how would you portray an artist emotionally, especially if they're manic? And so a good way to do that is just to choose a few traits. Don't try to choose every trait of a manic episode. So usually if an artist is in their zone, they're usually hyper-focused. They're not paying attention to anything outside. They don't know what day it is. They don't know what time it is. They probably haven't eaten anything. They haven't drank anything. They've forgotten all sense of time. They stay up at late hours, right? And so this isn't really an archetype. This is just artists, I should say. And so they're going to be a bit moody because their brain is always going to be somewhat focused on their work in some way or another. Everything around them is going to either add something to a project that they're working on at that time, or they're just observing everything all the time. I would say that artists, not archetypes, sorry. I would say that artists are extremely observant. And so if you're writing one of the artist archetypes, I would say to make them observant, but also make them easily frustrated. And so if you want to write an artist archetype into romance, I would say definitely play these games, except for, Lies of P is not a romance, but it does have a father-son relationship that is really kind of complicated and overly warped, but I would say study the characters that I mentioned before if you want to do artist archetypes, because they all have a different approach, but some kind of similar thread. And so maybe the romantic interest pulls them out of their self-absorption or out of their kind of destructive habits that they have as an artist. And so you'll want to weave that in and kind of help balance the artist out. That's every artist's dream, is to have someone that just keeps them grounded, but also supports their art and believes in them, and at least supports their vision, even if they can't see the same vision. So if you're not an artist, you don't have to worry too much about how to portray this character. You just have to study different artist archetypes. And so try to avoid any sort of stereotypes as you would with any other character. And the best way to avoid stereotypes is to give them a complex internal struggle and external struggle, and make them a combination of traits that work together well, but maybe aren't so stereotypical. You don't want to make the stereotypical genius artist or the stereotypical tortured artist. They're kind of boring. You can't do cliches. Audiences have favorites. They like these archetypes. These archetypes are built into storytelling. It's what we look for. It's what we enjoy. Even the anti-hero archetypes, we enjoy those. The heroes, we enjoy those. The villains, we enjoy those, right? So we enjoy archetypes. We enjoy patterns. But you don't want to make it cliche, because people will not respond to cliches. They get bored with it. So it's good to flesh out their background, especially their family background. Does their family support their art? Does their family hate their art? Do they do their art secretly away from their family? Where do they get their inspirations from their art? How did they become an artist? Why do they continue to do art when it's so hard? Those sorts of things will build your character into someone who is not a stereotype. And so that's it for the lecture part of this video. Now here's the workshop part. So if you have, a tablet or a piece of paper and some pens, or anything really, I want you to grab that, and we're going to do 3 short exercises. Now, if you want to just pause the video and just do one and come back tomorrow and do the second one, that's totally fine. Whatever you want. We're going to do a 3-minute exercise, a 5-minute exercise, and a 10-minute exercise. And so this will help you build artist archetypes. And so the first one, we're going to just build an artist. Now, you can take our lovely Kiro here, or you can create your own artist archetype. It doesn't matter to me, but we're going to give them a name. We're going to give them a job and a motivation. You can make also a female artist archetype. There's no rules. I just have a lot of men in this presentation because I play Otome games, and Otome games are 95% men characters. And so I'm not complaining, I'm just telling you that's what it is. And so if you want to make a female character, maybe a female innocent character, or a like protagonist, or a female villain character, feel free to do that as well. Whatever makes you happy, or even a child archetype. You could make it an artist child. It doesn't, or or even an elderly person. Doesn't really matter. But I want you to create an archetype. And so what we're gonna do is I want you to create their name, their job, their motivation, and then I want you to give them some personality traits on the scale of serious to playful, professional to genius, sweet to sensual, etc. And I want you to kind of make a note of why you would say that they are those things. So if you say that your character is serious, give me an example of how they're serious. Or if they're a genius, give me an example of why they're a genius. Just a short little note of, less than a sentence, not even a full sentence, just a little note for each character trait. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes on the clock here. Go ahead and make your character, and I will see you all in 3 minutes. That was 3 minutes. If you didn't finish, that's totally fine. We're gonna go on to our next activity. So, next activity I call fans and enemies. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your creator artist archetype character that you just built, and you're going to write a reaction. Now, I don't want you to write a full scene. I just want you to write maybe a paragraph or two for 2 different interactions. So the first interaction is going to be for a fan. So a fan comes up and they say, I can't believe it. Are you so-and-so? Can I take a picture with you? They're an absolute ecstatic fan. And so I want you to write how your artist archetype would react to this fan. And then after you have written a paragraph or 2 about that, I want you to write how they would react to their enemy. And so their enemy comes up to them on the street and said, hey, it's been a long time, so-and-so. What masterpiece are you failing to finish these days? And so this is a very snarky person, someone that is in competition, or someone that has kind of what's the rivalry? There we go. Rivalry with this creator archetype or something like that. So I want you to create a paragraph or 2 for each situation. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes so you can take some time to write what they might say. If you want to just take one of these and write a full scene, I won't stop you. I can't stop you. You can do what you want. But for practice, I would recommend doing both. But do what you like. Follow your creative joy. But do it for 5 minutes, and I'll see you in 5. Okay. Second activity finished. Great job, everyone, if you've stuck around this long. Good job. We're going to do activity number 3, which I call interrupting the genius. And so this is going to be a full scene. So in this one, your creator or artist character is in the middle of an inspired creative burst. They're in a manic episode. They're working on a project when another character interrupts them. So what I want you to do is I want you to choose the who. Who is interrupting them? Is it an assistant or a butler or a housekeeper, someone who works on the grounds, or is it a love interest, a parent, or a family member? And you have to decide why they're interrupting them. Is it an emergency, or because they weren't answering their phone? An appointment, or there's a problem, or news in the city, or their house is on fire, something like that. Choose a reason for them to interrupt, and then I want you to write a full scene. So just go ahead and go with whatever your gut is telling you, whatever sounded the most interesting, that's what you're going to write. Put that combination together, and I'll give you 10 minutes. Happy writing. Okay. So, now we have finished 3 exercises that should have helped you create an artist archetype. I hope those were helpful. If there is another archetype that you would like to look into, leave it in the comments and I will count it as a vote for next month's live stream. So I would like to do one of these once a month for the next year, and so we can finish that up, talk about different archetypes, do different workshops. Let me know what you want to see next. I'll be leaving up a poll directly after this. I'm going to go post that right now. So go ahead and look for that in my community page and leave your vote for next month's archetype that we'll go over with a workshop. And so thanks again, everyone, for joining in and watching the playback. Go ahead and subscribe to this channel if you want more writing workshops or creative writing tips. I'm also doing storytelling essays. I've been a little bit quiet for the past couple months because I'm finishing up my master's degree in philosophy. If you haven't heard me talk about that 500 times on my channel. So I'm trying to finish up that. I'm in my last year. So usually during my semester, I kind of go quiet for a little bit, but summer's coming, so I'll be putting up more videos and things of that sort soon. So go ahead and subscribe. And you can also check out my blog for free workbooks that are all on the side here. Only one of them is a paid $2 book, but all the rest of them are free. I forgot how many I have up on there. I have quite a few, but go ahead and go to buymeacoffee.com/Otome author. Download any of the workbooks there that will help you improve your writing, and then I also have some blogs there about writing life and community discussions, so go ahead and jump on there. I will see you guys next time. Thanks again. Enjoy your week, keep being beautiful beasts, and I'll see you tigers later. Peace.